レコードしてます。I'm going to record this little explanation because I think it's going to be useful for everybody to know. The question came up, what to do about short form questions. When you're trying to ask a question in short form, there are a few options, but none of them are necessarily what you would think of first. Okay, because the first thing you might think of is, for example, we were talking about the question, 寝るのが好きですか? Do you like to sleep? Right? 寝るのが好きだ would be a statement in the short form, right? I like sleeping. But 寝るのが好きだ doesn't work as a question. Okay? So it would be 寝るのが好きの or 寝るのが好きなの or 寝るのが好き with an up and down intonation, or a more masculine sounding one is 寝るのが好きか? That's kind of rough sounding sometimes. It's a little bit harsh, so it's not used as often. But those are kind of the options that you have to draw from. So probably the most common one is going to be 寝るのが好きの, which the no ending as a question form used to be considered feminine, but it's become pretty mainstream these days. The other option that's most common would be just the ski with the intonation change. So 寝るのが好きの or 寝るのが好き. So if you're struggling with that intonation thing, because it's kind of a weird little up and down thing, if you're struggling with that, you can do the no.
Basically, it's whether or not that's how you ask, like someone you're close to.
Yeah, this would be a very casual asking your friend. You like to sleep?
Like sleep?
You know? Yeah. Okay. So ski no or ski, and then if you're a guy talking to another guy and you're kind of being very macho,
hey, bro.
You can do ski ka.
You sleep, bro?
Okay, so those are kind of the most common options. The other one that's possible is ski nano, which is a variant that relates to a grammar structure we haven't actually studied yet.
Is it in our book?
I'm trying to remember if it's in this book or the next book. I think it might be one of the later chapters in this book.
You said 寝るの
寝るのが好きなの? 寝るのが好きの? Or 寝るのが好き? Sorry, 寝るのが好き? Mine came out funny that time. And then 寝るのが好きか? And that one, I mean, really sounds like a samurai talking almost. 寝るのが好きか? It's really like macho sounding.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you're not going for the macho sound, you probably don't want to use that one.
I have a question.
These others are more normal or neutral sounding.
So for the da, this is not question, but when you're using the da instead of des, it was saying, for example, Mary's a sophomore, you can either say Mary-san wa ni nensei or Mary-san wa ni nensei da yo. Can you just say da, or do you always have to add the yo?
The da by itself, once again, sounds very tough and masculine.
Okay.
So, Mary-san wa ni nensei da. Yeah, that sounds kind of rough.
Okay.
Mary-san wa ni nensei da yo sounds a little bit more natural.
Okay.
It's still somewhat masculine sounding, but it's not as harsh sounding. And just Mary-san wa ni nensei is okay, and that's more neutral.
Okay.
If you want to look at what used to be common also, like Mary-san wa ni nensei da wa would be a very feminine one, but that's sort of old-fashioned sounding. Not a lot of young women use that anymore. The women I know who speak that way are more my mother's generation and or older. over. Hey,
I read about using ga as like a sentence softener at the end.
ga as a sentence softener is kind of like you're saying but or however at the end, and then just sort of trailing off, like you're not saying the other half of the sentence, you're just implying it. So if you say something like, neru no ga suki ga, or neru no ga suki da ga, that's like you're saying, well, I like to sleep, but, and the but could be implying, I don't usually get a chance to sleep a lot, or I'm kind of ashamed of that, or I don't really want to like it, you know, depending on the context.
Making you negative.
There'll be a context where people kind of get what you mean by it without you explicitly stating it, and that culturally is very sort of Japanese. So it's very acceptable in Japanese culture to just sort of imply something rather than explicitly stating it, and everybody kind of nods their heads and understands enough, and that the fact that you don't want to explicitly say what your reason is or whatever is fine by everybody, you know, and they're not going to pry.
Gotcha.
What is a more, if you want to sound more feminine, what's a way that you can say instead of saying da or da yo or da wa, since it's old fashioned?
You can end with the nano again, but in a statement tone instead of a question tone.
Okay.
So, you can say like, Mary-san wa 2年生なの,
Okay.
or Mary-san wa 2年生. So,
Okay.
2年生 by itself is fairly neutral. 2年生なの is kind of feminine. 2年生だわ is very old-fashioned feminine.
Okay.
There are still women who talk that way, but like I said, most of them are older. And then, then you've got this 2年生だよ is fairly neutral as well, slightly masculine, but fairly neutral. A lot of, language shifts and changes a lot over time. And recently, a lot of the things that used to be very specific to one gender or the other have started to either merge toward the middle or become considered more extreme and falling out of common usage. So the very masculine and very feminine forms are becoming less common, and the sort of semi-feminine, semi-masculine forms are sort of moving toward the center, becoming equally neutral and acceptable. So, はい、時間ですね。はい、他の質問がありましたか?
Can you say dane, or is that like a
You
different meaning?
Yeah, that you can, but it's kind of implying that you're looking for confirmation. You're not
Okay.
sure about the facts, so
Okay.
you're looking for the other person to let you know whether or not you're correct.
Okay.
So, okay? 時間です。Any
Hey,
other
guys.
questions?
See ya.
じゃあ、終わりましょう。